Well, I've been playing this morning. I've actually worked most of the week and I'm just kind of kicked back this morning. So I'm scheming on the planer a little bit. And as I walk by this every day, I, like any of my other projects, it takes me a while. I develop a plan on exactly what I'm going to do. And I thought I'd share that with you. But I thought what we'd do first is I thought we'd go over the controls of this. I um, I see a few videos out on planers now that I'm searching for it. You will a lot of times show throwing a lever and watching the machine run, and that's kind of cool. It's kind of like watching a shaper, kind of mesmerizing, but there's no real explanation of how they work, and they're very similar to a shaper in most aspects of it. But I found this one fairly interesting, and I thought you might enjoy seeing just how it operates. So kind of do an overview, and we'll talk about everything. I spent about the last 2 hours this morning just walking around this machine trying to understand it better and kind of finalizing my plan of attack once we do get ready to roll it into the shop as we clean it up and everything. And about 90% of what I'm going to do to it is just cosmetic, because I don't think there's anything major wrong with it. But anyway, that's what I've done this morning. So control-wise, it's got all Cutler hammer controls on it. It's a three-phase machine, got a 10 horsepower motor on it, and I think we've talked about this before, but I'm just kind of rambling off the top of my head here. So this is our start-stop switch here, and kind of the overview of the electrical is we've got power coming into a main shut-off on the backside, and it's a more modern control, or basically a big three-phase knife switch is what they mounted on there, and on-off power control for it. From there it goes into a Cutler hammer motor starter, and it's an old mechanical starter. I pulled the cover off this morning and was looking at it. It looks to be in perfect condition. I don't see a thing wrong with it. No reason for me to do anything except when I get to cleaning up this machine. Well, I'm sure it'll get painted back to its original color, which I believe was black. Same way with the motor. It's an old GE 10 horse motor, 230 volt three phase, of course, like everything else. This is the actual start-stop switch. So this is just our contactor switch that activates the contactor in the motor starter control. And very simple, start-stop. You hit the start switch, your motor's running, and the machine's ready to operate. So from there we've got this lever here, which is our clutch lever. And this is in the stop position here. When you push it in, that engages your table feed and all the rest of the mechanicals. Your clutch assembly is right here, and it's got an adjust clutch here, cover here. I've had that cover off and looked at it. Very similar to a automotive clutch. It's a three-fingered, like a heavy-duty clutch. Actually, it reminds me more of a snowmobile clutch than anything else, with the three interchangeable fingers on it. You can adjust the clutch there. In all honesty, I haven't looked at it enough to understand how to adjust it, and I don't think it's necessary at this point in time. I believe it's still in adjustment. Will be fine once it's got new lubricant in it. We make sure we've got the lube system going. So once we engage it, we've got table movement and anything else that we have engaged, such as power feeds. So speed controls for the table, it runs from 9 to 45 strokes per minute. And it's controlled by these three levers here. Move this down a little bit more. It's controlled by these three levers here, and they're all geared levers. And depending on what position you've got them in and what combination you've got, adjust your table speed. And we're not aligning there, but yeah, gear alignment. This is not a constant mesh, so you can find the speeds on there. I've shifted them; they shift fine. So that adjusts your table speed, strokes per minute, and depending on what your combination is and what your length of stroke is, gives you service foot per minute. We've got the little chart here that shows us, and that's one of the things I've done today, is gone through and kind of cleaned up these little signage and charts that are on them. We've got Gitz oilers on virtually everything. The stroke of the table, how long your travel is. Stroke is adjusted right here, very similar to what a shaper would be. And this is our lock ring. You're going to loosen your lock and adjust it for stroke, whichever way, tighten your lock ring back down, and that adjusts your length of stroke. Now you can adjust positioning of the stroke of where it is on the table with this right here, and this will adjust. This is the lock end of it, and that would be to unlock. And then table movement is adjusted by this, one way or the other. Which way? Maybe I'm going the wrong way. There's where our table positioning is going to be, depending on where this is adjusted. Your stroke's going to remain the same, but this adjusts what position your table's at, that it's going to operate within that stroke. So if you've got something mounted right here, you're going to want to adjust it down that way for that stroke to cover it. But anyway, you can adjust your table position right there, and then you can lock it again in position. Get our lock tightened up here, just like that. Same as the length of stroke, except it's just these two levers down here that control it. So that's that positioning. Now when we go to the overarm support and the rest of the column, now the column itself, or the cross arm itself, is adjustable in height, and that's manually set. It's adjusted by this right here. You loosen this lock nut, which actually goes all the way through to the other side, and there's more support on the back, and it locks on the back side to hold it in position. But you loosen that, and then you can adjust your positioning of your cross arm with this right here. There's this goes into a bevel gear up to the top where there's 2 gears, and that activates your gear up and down there. Feed controls for position of your clapper box side to side and up and down. This bottom adjustment here will run your table back and forth, just like that. And the upper one adjusts the position of the clapper box itself for whatever angle you've got it set at. Now your feed of how much movement it is, and I believe it's 0.8 per is the adjustment sequence. It will be adjusted right here, and I believe we're in neutral there, and every adjustment around is 0.8, and I believe there's 13 positions. I believe the first one's neutral, and then each of these increases your increment of movement. Now once you set that, you've got power feed both on your crossbar and on your clapper box, and that is adjusted with these controls right here. When you move this lever into the upper position, that engages your power feeds, so it remains locked. Now both of these are still in neutral. This one will be your cross travel, and you move it to that position to engage your power feed, back to neutral. If you want to move your compound, this one engages those. So I believe that's pretty much the controls for it. You know, they're fairly straightforward. It's very similar to a shaper. Like I say, a little bit of differences in them, but seems to be, you know, basically the same. But hopefully that shows you a little bit about how they operate if you're interested. If you're not, well, then you probably should have skipped this video. But that's the way that works. Plans for this shaper, or for this planer, as we get ready to move it in, it's going to be 90% cosmetic is what I'm going to do to this. There is some mechanical stuff that I'm going to do, and a couple of things. One thing that concerns me that I'm not sure about yet. I think it's fine, but I want to make sure it's right, and that's the oiling system on it. To lubricate the ways underneath the table, we have 2 great big Gitz oilers on the back side, and I'll try and get a picture of that and throw it in there for you. But they're 2 fairly substantial Gitz oilers. They're yay big around and yay tall. So I believe those are going to be strictly for way oil. I'm not sure. I don't believe there's the standard oiling system oils the ways, although I don't know that for sure yet. But with the size of those oilers, I'm assuming that they're going to take way oil basically, and we're going to have to manually lubricate those. Now there's Gitz oilers all over the place, and A lot of those are going to be changed because some of them are damaged, some of them don't have good spring load mechanisms on the lids and things like that, and some of them are broken. So we'll have to do that. So I'm going to disassemble some things that have to come off to be able to change those Gitz oilers. You know, this one's loose. Well, it would be okay, but since we're going to be replacing, why we'll probably do that. To get that threaded Gitz oiler out of there, we have to pull this cover plate off. So we'll look and see from there. There's there's 4 more oilers on the back side of the unit back here. We'll see what we have to disassemble there. There's looks to be a vane, or probably a vane, or maybe a impeller style pump that's chain driven, and that's going to be the oiler system for, I believe, everything internally. It's just a small pump there, and it doesn't automatically pump when the motor's running. When you're engaged is when that's going to oil the system. So I want to make sure that works, and I won't be able to really verify that until we change out the oils in this. That's another concern, is the only information I find on it, it tells you to use a good quality oil in the sump of this. It doesn't tell you anything about what weight we should be running or anything like that. I'm assuming at this point, and if I find more information or if somebody's got some information, please send it to me. I'm assuming I can use a good non-detergent 40 weight oil, 30 weight oil, 50 weight oil, basically anything that's going to feed through to add lubrication to it. The machine has Timke bearings in it throughout, it looks like, and I would assume we can use any kind of a standard oil in there that's going to keep lubrication in it. The access to the sump itself in the base of the machine is on the other side, and it calls for, I think, about 3 inches of whatever oil you choose to be down in the sump, and the whole base, not the whole base, but probably about 3 foot by the width of the base is going to be a sump that contains oil in it, and I want to change that all out. Now all our gears for changing and things like that are here in this in this upright casting. When we look down here, we've got a drain down here, we've got a little sight glass here that I've already cleaned up a little bit, and then we've got a filler here. Now, what I believe it to be is it's connected to the main sump, but I believe we've got a little bit of a sump right here, and all our bearings and gears just rest in that sump, so they're immersed in oil at the bottom of them, and then when it's operating away, it slings that oil and lubricates everything up above, is the way I interpret it to work at this point in time. The clutch assembly, we've got another nice little brass and glass oiler on the back side here that I've cleaned up a little bit, and I believe that just lubricates the chain or belt. I believe we're chain driven off of the motor up here to operate the clutch up into the clutch assembly. So that's just to lubricate that. We've got an oiler here which is broken off, top's gone off of it, which appears to just lubricate the pivot on the clutch assembly, where this pivot rides down off of our bar here. So that lubricates that. But anyway, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like I said, there's a pressure gauge on the oil system, but you have to have the machine running and engaged before that will be pumping anyway. So I'll verify that when we get to that point, one way or the other. So that's the way that works. When I go to move this in, there's going to be some more pressure washing on it, and like I say, 90% of this is going to be cosmetic. We're going to put a paint job back on it to make it look nice. Now the original color of this machine appears to be this blue-gray here. We've got these fancy little brass plaques. It says patent applied for. We're not even patent pending. This is patent applied for. But anyway, this is the original blue-gray that was on it. I think it's kind of ugly myself, but I think we'll probably go back to something very similar to that just because it was original. We'll pressure wash off a lot of this crap. We'll scrape a little bit. I've already started kind of scraping a little bit. And then we'll go back and wire brush everything off and get down to something halfway decent. Whether we prime it or whether we just put a good rust preventative coating on it, some sort of an industrial coating, why, we'll do that, and then we'll probably have to touch up the fancy little lettering and stuff like that on it, but that will get done. Now I think my plan overall as we get into this is I'm probably going to pull off the cross rail assembly. And a couple of reasons for that. It's pretty ragged anyway and needs to be cleaned up. And I think it's a little bit stiff, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think we've got just enough of a little bit of rust coating underneath everything that it's allowing it to be kind of stiff. So if I plan on pulling that up and refreshing all of that, we can clean all of that up, get the crossbars and our uprights and everything back to where hopefully we're going to see the same flaking on it. And the cross arm on the inside, it's a hollow casting. It's kind of ragged in there and dirty and grungy and stuff. And I think we can clean it up quite a bit better, and then go back and paint it at the same time, get that refreshed. And while we've got it apart, we can take all of our shafts, all of our cross screws and everything, and we can go ahead and derust those. You know, probably with the same derusting process I've started using a little bit. I'm really happy with that. So I think we'll set up something to where we can do those, and we can clean off the surfaces in the main casting, but all of the little accessories like this, and you know, our handles and our shafts and all of that stuff, we can run through electrolytic derusting and get that done, and that will give me better access. At the same time, I want to pull the table off of this. I want to check the ways underneath, make sure we don't have anything underneath there that's going to continue to scratch stuff up if it were to hang up underneath there, and just in general check the condition of those ways. I want to check and see if there is oiling off of that oiling system. Plus, we can clean up this table, run it through some sort of a derusting process the same way. I've got to figure out what I'm going to do to have something big enough to immerse that in. But I think we can immerse that in a derust and get that cleaned up a little bit better without too much elbow grease like we'd have if I just continue to clean it up like that. We can check underneath. Now, underneath the bed and the top of the casting, there's a sheet metal pan, basically, or drain pan, that allows any oil and everything to drain back down in. The bull gear that operates the table comes up through there. And it's all flaky and crappy underneath too, so that will give me the opportunity to pull that out. I can better inspect what's underneath it, and we can clean up that sheet metal and hopefully get a good coating of paint on there that will hold up a little bit better and freshen that up. So, and along the way, check all the oilers, and just in general give me a better understanding of the machine and how it's going to work. So that's kind of the plan for the future with it. You know, I'm still really happy with it. I'm anxious to finish up this shop crap so I can get it inside and start working on it. And that'll be, you know, sometime later this summer, this fall, whenever it happens, one way or another. I want it in and under cover before winter hits. So I just continue to throw a little bit of oil at it to keep everything from getting any worse than what it is. And you know, it's going to be a great project once we get to it. I'm anxious to have it as a working machine. You know, it's pretty ugly. I can't see running it this way, you know, in the condition it's in. But once it's cleaned up, freshened up, and we checked the mechanics of it, got new lubricant in it, and everything going, I think it's going to do a really good job. I think I've got a few projects in line for it, and it's going to be fun. So anyway, that's what I'm wasting my time on a Saturday morning. So if you found this enjoyable and haven't done it already, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button, and any comments or suggestions, leave them in the comments section for me below. As an aside, I got permission to throw in the little video of the traction engine from the gentleman in the UK, so hang around for a few minutes, watch the end of that, and I think you'll find it intriguing. So as always, thanks for taking the time to watch.